From the outside he looked like the kind of man people admired. Wealthy, influential, untouchable. The type of man who walked into any room and instantly controlled it with nothing more than his presence. But behind the expensive clothes, behind the reputation he carefully crafted, was a darkness he hoped the world would never see. For years he lived two lives, one polished for the public, and one hidden in the shadows. A life filled with secrets, manipulation, and choices so devastating that when the truth finally surfaced, even the investigators working the case said they had never seen anything like it. Tonight, we're not just telling the story of a crime. We're uncovering the truth about a man who believed his wealth could shield him from consequences, and about the woman whose life was changed forever because of him. This is the case that made an entire community ask the same question. How did he get away with this for so long? And more importantly, why did no one stop him sooner? This is the story of Elias Montgomery, a billionaire whose charm fooled an entire city. And Rebecca Hale, the woman who thought she was marrying her protector, not her captor. Elias Montgomery wasn't just wealthy, he was a symbol of power. The kind of man whose name was printed on buildings, charity events, and political fundraisers. People trusted him. People envied him. People believed he was incapable of wrongdoing. Rebecca Hale was the opposite. A schoolteacher raised in a quiet neighborhood, known for her kindness and the way she always put others first. She had no idea that the man who swept her off her feet carried secrets darker than anything she had ever imagined. Their worlds collided fast, intensely, and publicly. Within months, society pages were celebrating their engagement. Pictures of the two smiling together filled social media, the billionaire and the beautiful teacher, a modern fairy tale. But behind closed doors, something else was happening. Something Rebecca tried to ignore. Something Elias worked very hard to hide. And on their honeymoon, everything changed. Tonight, we break down the disturbing timeline that led to a crime so shocking, investigators still talk about it years later. This is the case of Elias Montgomery, and the moment karma finally walked through his front door. Elias Montgomery was born into power. His father, a real estate titan. His mother, the heiress to a shipping empire. From the moment he took his first breath, his life was mapped out for him. Influence, wealth, and the unspoken belief that rules didn't apply to people like the Montgomerys. By age 25, Elias had already taken control of several family businesses, expanding them aggressively and earning a reputation as a man who always got what he wanted. His charm was legendary. His temper was whispered about. But nothing could stick to him. Every allegation, every complaint, every scandal, seemed to disappear almost overnight. People close to him described two very different versions of Elias. The public Elias, charismatic, generous, the billionaire philanthropist with a perfect smile. And the private Elias, unpredictable, controlling, and capable of ruthlessness when things didn't go his way. There were rumors of previous relationships ending abruptly. Rumors of women leaving without explanation. Rumors of settlements that never made their way into official records. But in Elias's world, rumors were buried as quickly as they surfaced. Rebecca Hale. Rebecca Hale grew up on the opposite side of life. She was raised in a small middle-class neighborhood by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Rebecca learned early the value of kindness, resilience, and sacrifice. She became a schoolteacher not for money, but because she genuinely loved helping children find their voice. Friends described her as soft-spoken, compassionate, and the type of person who remembered everyone's birthday, even if they didn't remember hers. Rebecca had never been interested in wealth or status. She lived simply. She loved deeply. And she believed, almost to a fault, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. When she met Elias, it felt like a dream. A powerful man noticing someone as humble as her. A billionaire taking interest in a teacher who lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. It felt surreal, intoxicating, impossible to question. Her friends worried. Her mother hesitated. But Rebecca insisted she had finally found someone who truly saw her. What she didn't know was that Elias wasn't drawn to her kindness. He was drawn to her vulnerability. And that vulnerability would be exploited in ways she could never have predicted. Their story began like a modern fairy tale. Rebecca Hale, a teacher with a quiet life, meeting Elias Montgomery, the billionaire with a reputation that seemed untouchable. On the surface it was perfect. Public appearances showed a couple deeply in love, attending charity galas, parties, and high-profile events. Social media was flooded with images of their smiles, their laughter, their apparent happiness. But behind closed doors the story was very different. At first, Elias was attentive, charming, and seemingly devoted. He bought lavish gifts, whisked Rebecca away on expensive trips, and painted a world of romance that no one else could compete with. She felt seen, special, and untouchable in his eyes. Slowly the cracks began to appear. He became controlling. He monitored her communications. He questioned her friends and family. Simple acts of independence, like meeting a friend for coffee, were met with suspicion and anger. Rebecca tried to rationalize his behavior, telling herself it was love, that he cared too much, that this was just part of being with someone so powerful. But the tension grew layer by layer until the relationship was no longer about love, it was about control. Friends began to notice the changes. Rebecca's once vibrant personality was dimmed by constant caution. Elias's charming public persona masked a private reality where fear and manipulation had replaced trust. Even those closest to them could sense the unease, the quiet arguments, the sudden disappearances, the inexplicable cancellations of social events. And yet the wedding went forward. It was, in Rebecca's eyes, a commitment to love, and in Elias's, a final step toward absolute control. What neither of them knew at the time, however, was that the honeymoon, the moment everyone celebrated, would become the stage for a life-altering revelation. A moment where the balance of power would shift, and the consequences of Elias's actions would finally become unavoidable. It was a morning like any other, at least on the surface. Rebecca Hale woke in the grand suite of the Montgomery mansion, sunlight spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sound of the ocean crashing against the private docks below should have been peaceful, but an unshakable tension lingered in the air. Elias Montgomery moved about the suite with the precision of someone who always got what he wanted. On this day there were no smiles, no shared laughter, only subtle commands masked as concern. "Stay close," he said. "Don't wander." Words that, at first, seemed protective, but carried an unspoken warning. The couple boarded the luxury yacht for what was supposed to be a romantic cruise, the centerpiece of their honeymoon. Friends and family had celebrated their union publicly, but no one outside those walls could have imagined what would unfold. As the yacht cut through the water, Rebecca tried to lighten the mood, suggesting games, recounting stories from her childhood, attempting to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. But Elias's demeanor had changed. Every glance carried scrutiny, every smile felt forced, every touch seemed calculated. Then the moment came. A disagreement over something trivial, the kind of argument that could happen in any couple's day, escalated unnaturally fast. Elias's temper flared, his words sharp and cutting. He pushed Rebecca into a corner of the yacht. She stumbled, and in an instant she realized that this was no ordinary argument. The yacht, the symbol of their wealth and supposed romance, became a trap. Rebecca's attempts to reason, to appeal to the man she had once loved, only seemed to fuel his anger. And then, in a split second that would change everything, Elias made a move, one that could have ended her life in an instant. But fate, or karma, intervened. A sudden misstep, an unexpected distraction, a moment of hesitation. Rebecca survived the initial attack, scrambling to regain control of the situation. The tension on that yacht would define the rest of their lives. A single day that would unravel a carefully crafted facade and expose the darkness Elias had hidden for so long. By the time the yacht returned to the dock, The truth was impossible to ignore. What had seemed like a perfect honeymoon was now a crime scene, and what happened that day would shock investigators, friends, and family alike. The question looming over everyone involved was now clear. Who was Elias Montgomery really? And how far would he go to protect the life he had built on lies? The events of that fateful day sent shockwaves through everyone who knew the Montgomerys. Authorities were called to the mansion and the yacht, but what they discovered raised more questions than answers. Rebecca Hale's account was detailed, emotional, and consistent, but Elias Montgomery remained calm, composed, almost untouchable. He painted a picture of a misunderstanding, of an argument blown out of proportion. Friends and staff, caught between loyalty and fear, offered conflicting statements. Some claimed they had never seen him act that way, others whispered that he had a temper he carefully concealed. Investigators began piecing together the puzzle. They scoured the mansion, documenting everything: surveillance footage, fingerprints, signs of a struggle. Every room told a story. Objects out of place. Signs of control. Hidden passages. Security footage showing movements that didn't match Elias's account. Financial records were next. Investigators discovered unusual withdrawals, purchases, and payments, patterns suggesting premeditation. Emails and text messages revealed a side of Elias no one outside the investigation had ever seen. Threatening messages, controlling language, and attempts to manipulate those closest to Rebecca slowly came to light. Witnesses were interviewed: neighbors who heard arguments, friends who noticed Rebecca's sudden isolation, staff who observed Elias's private behavior. Each account added a new layer to the story. The public persona of a perfect, charming billionaire began to crumble. And then came the physical evidence. Scratches and bruises on Rebecca's arms and shoulders, inconsistent with her story of a simple stumble. Objects that appeared to be intentionally moved or placed during the confrontation on the yacht. Phone records showing Elias's manipulations and attempts to cover his tracks. Every piece told the same story. The man who had been untouchable for so long was hiding a truth that would eventually come to light. The investigators, now convinced this was more than a honeymoon gone wrong, pushed forward with intensity. They coordinated with maritime authorities to reconstruct the events on the yacht. They traced every movement, every interaction, every lie. It became clear, this was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, controlled act. And Rebecca's courage in speaking out was about to reveal a shocking reality no one wanted to believe. By the end of the investigation phase, the case against Elias Montgomery was no longer speculative. The evidence, witness testimony, and forensic analysis painted a chilling portrait of a man whose wealth and power had blinded him to one simple truth: the consequences of his actions would not be ignored. After weeks of painstaking investigation, law enforcement finally moved in. Elias Montgomery, the untouchable billionaire, was arrested at his mansion, surrounded by cameras, reporters, and the silent disbelief of a world that had never expected this to happen. Handcuffed and restrained, he maintained the calm composure that had carried him through decades of wealth and influence. But inside, even he knew the game had changed. The trial began months later, and the courtroom quickly became a stage for a story that captivated the public. Media outlets flocked to cover every twist and turn. The prosecution laid out a damning case, presenting evidence meticulously gathered from the mansion, the yacht, and digital communications. Witnesses took the stand: staff members, neighbors, friends, and family, each recounting moments that painted Elias as a man whose charm concealed a controlling and dangerous nature. The courtroom felt electric with tension as Rebecca Hale testified, her voice steady but charged with emotion. She described the events on the yacht, the manipulation, the fear, and the moments when she thought she might not survive. Elias's defense team attempted to cast doubt, highlighting inconsistencies and suggesting exaggeration. They painted him as misunderstood, a man whose reputation had been tarnished by misunderstandings and rumor. But the weight of evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, medical reports, and forensic analysis corroborated Rebecca's testimony. The trial became a psychological battle as lawyers dissected every word, every gesture. Elias, once commanding in public, now sat silent, the full force of the legal system bearing down. The jury, tasked with determining truth from deception, listened intently to each testimony, each exhibit, each revelation. Throughout the trial, the public watched, riveted. Commentators debated the morality of the case, the power of wealth, and the resilience of a woman who refused to be silenced. Social media was flooded with opinions, theories, and outrage, all underscoring the emotional intensity of the proceedings. Finally, after days of deliberation, the jury reached its verdict. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Elias Montgomery, the man who had once believed he was untouchable, was found guilty. Guilty not only of the act that had terrified Rebecca Hale but also of the web of manipulation and control that had defined their relationship. For Rebecca, it was a moment of relief, a sense of justice achieved after enduring fear, manipulation, and unimaginable stress. For the public, it was a stark reminder: wealth and influence cannot shield someone from accountability. Years have passed since the shocking events that unfolded between Elias Montgomery and Rebecca Hale, yet the impact of that day remains deeply etched in their lives and in the public memory. Rebecca Hale has slowly rebuilt her life. She returned to teaching, but with a renewed sense of purpose, advocating for victims of abuse and control, speaking quietly but powerfully about the importance of vigilance and self-empowerment. Friends describe her as stronger than ever, someone who has transformed trauma into resilience. While the scars of her experience remain, she has found a measure of peace, a reminder that courage can survive even the darkest of days. Elias Montgomery, once the embodiment of wealth and untouchable influence, now lives a very different life. His freedom stripped away, he faces the reality of decades behind bars. For the first time in his life, wealth could not shield him from accountability. The empire he built, the power he wielded, all stand as empty monuments to choices that led him to this fate. The mansion, the yacht, and the symbols of his wealth have changed hands. To the outside world, they are now reminders not of glamour, but of a cautionary tale, that privilege cannot erase wrongdoing, and that no one is above the consequences of their actions. The public, meanwhile, continues to follow the story. The case is cited in discussions about wealth, power, and the vulnerabilities of those caught in abusive relationships. Experts and commentators still analyze the events, reminding the world that vigilance, courage, and speaking out can bring justice, even when it seems impossible. For everyone involved, the story is both a closure and a lesson. That truth has a way of revealing itself, that courage can survive the darkest situations, and that in the end, karma, patient and inevitable, will always find its way. As the story of Elias Montgomery and Rebecca Hale comes to a close, we are left with a stark reminder: wealth, power, and influence may shape the world around us, but they cannot shield someone from the truth. Rebecca's courage, her refusal to remain silent, serves as a lesson for all of us, that even in the face of fear, speaking out can bring justice, change, and healing. And Elias Montgomery's fall from untouchable privilege is proof that no one is above accountability. This case is more than a story of crime, it is a story of resilience, of consequences, and of the quiet strength it takes to reclaim your life after betrayal. Now we want to hear from you. What part of this story shocked you the most? Do you think justice was fully served, or could more have been done? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice is part of the conversation. If you found this story compelling, hit the like button and subscribe to True Crime Mysteries for more in-depth cases that reveal the hidden truths behind shocking crimes. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because in our next episode, we'll uncover another tale of deception, betrayal, and the pursuit of justice. One that proves once again, truth has a way of catching up with everyone.